It keeps happening. The same situation, different people, different circumstances, but somehow the same lesson, the same choice, the same feeling that you've been here before. You think it's bad luck. You think it's coincidence. You think the universe is out to get you. But Ibn Arabi would tell you something completely different. He would say this repetition is not punishment. It's a message. And you keep missing it. Not because you're not paying attention, but because you're looking in the wrong direction. Most people move through life like they're walking through a foreign country without speaking the language. Signs are everywhere, but they can't read them. Not because the signs aren't clear, but because they've never learned the alphabet. Reality is not just what happens to you. Reality is what speaks to you. Every moment is a conversation. Every pattern is a message trying to tell you something crucial about your path. But you're not listening. You're too busy reacting. Ibn Arabi understood this deeply. Everything that happens is a message encoded in the language of experience. The tragedy is not that life stops speaking to you. The tragedy is that you stop listening. You dismiss the synchronicities. You ignore the recurring themes. You tell yourself it doesn't mean anything, but it always means something. The universe doesn't communicate in words. It communicates in experiences. That conversation that felt strangely significant. That book that appeared exactly when you needed it. That person who showed up just when you were asking for guidance. These are not accidents. These are messages. And you keep missing them because you're waiting for something more obvious. But life rarely works that way. Ibn Arabi said that reality is constantly revealing itself to you. Through repetition. Through patterns. Through the things that keep showing up. The most important messages are often quiet. They whisper instead of shout. And if you're not paying attention, they pass by unnoticed. Then later, you look back and realize the sign was right there. But you weren't ready to see it. So why do you keep missing the signs? The first reason is noise. Your life is so loud you can't hear the whispers, notifications, worries about the future, regrets about the past, mental chatter that drowns out everything else. You're so busy thinking about what's next that you miss what's happening now. So focused on your plans that you don't notice when life is trying to redirect you. Ibn Arabi would tell you the first step is creating silence. Not external silence, but internal silence. The ability to quiet your mind enough to notice what's actually happening. To pause, to observe, to feel when something carries weight. This is about becoming present, because presence is the language reality speaks. And if you're never present, you'll never understand what's being said. The second reason you miss the signs is expectation. You think a sign should be clear, obvious, unmistakable. But signs rarely arrive the way you expect. That person who irritates you might be showing you something about yourself. That obstacle might be redirecting you away from the wrong path. That loss might be clearing space for something new. But because it doesn't look like what you think a sign should look like, you dismiss it. The third reason you miss the signs is fear. You see the sign. Something inside you knows this is important. But you don't want it to be important. Because if you acknowledge it, you'll have to change. So you pretend you didn't see it. You rationalize it away. And the sign passes by. But it comes back. Again and again. Each time louder. Until eventually you can't ignore it anymore. Until the gentle whisper becomes a shout. This is what Ibn Arabi meant about life's mercy and severity. Life always gives you signs. It tries to guide you gently. But if you keep refusing to listen, the message comes more forcefully. The gentle hint becomes unavoidable crisis. Not as punishment, but because the message is too important to keep ignoring. But here's what most people don't understand. You don't have to wait for the crisis. You can learn to read the early signs. You can develop the sensitivity to notice when life is trying to tell you something before it has to shout. This is not a mystical ability reserved for special people. This is a skill anyone can develop. It starts with paying attention, really paying attention, to how things feel, to what keeps recurring, to the patterns in your life that you've been dismissing as coincidence. Ibn Arabi taught that patterns are never random. If something keeps happening in your life, there's a reason. Same type of person, there's a message. Same situation, there's a lesson. Same discomfort, there's something to look at. A pattern is the sign. Once you understand it, the pattern can change, but not before. This is why some people feel stuck in loops. They keep experiencing the same problems with different faces. Same relationship dynamic, different partner. Same work frustration, different job. Same inner conflict, different external circumstances. And they wonder why nothing ever changes. They wonder why life keeps dealing them the same hand. But the hand isn't the problem. The problem is that they haven't learned to read what the hand is showing them. They're treating the symptoms instead of seeing the pattern. They're reacting to the surface instead of understanding the depth. Ibn Arabi would ask you to look at your life right now. What keeps repeating? What keeps showing up despite your best efforts to avoid it? What theme keeps playing in different variations? That's your sign. That's your message. And it will keep repeating until you finally stop and ask, what is this trying to tell me? Not what do I want it to mean? Not what would be convenient for it to mean, but what is it actually showing me about myself, about my path, about what needs to change? And here's the difficult part. Sometimes the sign is telling you that you're on the wrong path. Sometimes it's showing you that what you're chasing isn't what you actually need. Sometimes it's revealing that who you're trying to become isn't who you actually are. And this is terrifying. Because you've invested so much. You've built so much of your identity around this direction. You've told everyone this is what you're doing. And now life is gently, persistently, repeatedly showing you that it's not working, that it's not aligned, that there's a different path calling you. But you don't want to see it. So you keep pushing, keep forcing, keep trying to make it work. And the signs keep getting stronger. The resistance keeps growing. The discomfort keeps intensifying. Until finally, something breaks. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can choose to listen to the early signs. You can choose to honor what you're feeling, even when it doesn't make logical sense. You can choose to trust that when life keeps closing a door, maybe it's because there's a better door waiting. When life keeps putting obstacles in your path, maybe it's because that path isn't yours. When life keeps bringing you the same lesson in different forms, maybe it's time to finally learn it instead of just surviving it again. Ibn Arabi said that every soul has a unique path, a direction that's perfectly aligned with who they actually are, not who they think they should be. And life is constantly trying to guide you back to that path. Every time you stray, every time you take a turn based on fear or pressure or other people's expectations, life sends you signals, gentle redirections, uncomfortable feelings, situations that don't quite work out, not to punish you, but to guide you, to show you where the alignment is and where it isn't, to help you find your way back to the path that's actually yours. But you have to be willing to see the signs. You have to be willing to feel them. You have to be willing to trust them, even when they're leading you somewhere you didn't plan to go. Because the path you planned is based on who you thought you were, who you thought you should be, what you thought would make you happy. But the path life is showing you is based on who you actually are. And sometimes those two things are very different. So how do you start reading the signs? How do you develop this sensitivity? Ibn Arabi offered a practice that seems simple, but changes everything. He said, pay attention to what expands you and what contracts you. Pay attention to what brings you alive and what drains you. Pay attention to what feels like flow and what feels like force. Your body knows before your mind does. Your emotions know before your logic does. When you're aligned with your true path, there's an ease. Not because it's always easy, but because even when it's difficult, it feels right. There's a sense of this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is who I'm supposed to be becoming. But when you're out of alignment, there's a constant sense of resistance, of pushing, of trying to convince yourself, of needing external validation to feel okay about your choices, of exhaustion that goes beyond physical tiredness. This is your sign. This is life saying you're going in the wrong direction. Not wrong in a moral sense. Wrong in an alignment sense. Wrong for who you actually are. And if you ignore this sign, if you keep pushing through the resistance, eventually your body will stop you. Your energy will collapse. Your motivation will disappear. Your health will demand attention. Not as punishment, as protection. As a last resort to get you to finally stop and listen. The tragedy is that most people only listen after the breakdown, after the crisis, after they've pushed so far past the early signs that life has no choice but to speak through pain. But Ibn Arabi's teaching offers another way, the way of sensitivity, the way of paying attention before the crisis, the way of honoring the subtle signals before they become loud alarms. This requires trust. Trust that life is not random. Trust that patterns have meaning. Trust that what keeps showing up deserves your attention. Trust that your feelings are information, not just noise to be ignored. And it requires courage. Courage to follow the signs, even when they lead you away from what's safe, what's expected, what makes sense to other people. Courage to change direction, even after you've invested time and energy. Courage to admit that maybe you were wrong about what you needed. Courage to disappoint people who want you to stay on the path they understand. Courage to walk into uncertainty because the sign is clear even if the destination. I send single quotes. Ibn Arabi's life was a testament to this courage. Every time he received a sign, every time something inside him said this is your next step, he followed it. Even when it meant leaving comfort. Even when it meant walking alone. Even when it meant people would misunderstand him. He trusted the signs more than he trusted his plans. He trusted the inner knowing more than the outer expectations. And that trust led him to become who he was meant to become. Not who he thought he should become. Who he was actually meant to become. This is what's available to you. Not a life without problems. Not a path without challenges. But a life where you're walking in alignment. Where the difficulties you face are part of your growth, not obstacles to your path. Where the lessons you learn are exactly the lessons you need. Where the people you meet show up at precisely the right time. Where the opportunities that open are the ones that actually serve you. This is what happens when you learn to read the signs. When you develop the sensitivity to notice what life is showing you. When you have the courage to follow what you're being shown, even when it doesn't make conventional sense, the signs are there. They've always been there. They're there right now. In the patterns you keep experiencing. In the feelings you keep having. In the situations that keep arising. In the resistance you keep facing. In the ease you sometimes feel. In the doors that close and the doors that open. In the people who come and the people who go. Life is speaking to you constantly. The only question is whether you're finally ready to listen. Ibn Arabi would tell you that the greatest waste of a human life is not failure. It's walking the entire journey without ever noticing the signs. It's spending your whole life following someone else's map when you had your own compass the entire time. It's reaching the end and realizing that the path you are looking for was being shown to you at every turn, but you were too busy, too afraid, too stubborn to see it. Don't let that be your story. Start reading the signs. Start trusting what you see. Start following where they lead, because they're leading you home, not to a place, but to yourself, to the version of yourself that's been waiting for you to finally pay attention, to finally listen, to finally follow the path that was always meant to be yours. The signs are there. Stop missing them.